Shalom, this is Levi Shore. Welcome back to Sweet Good Torah. So there's been a lot of talk in the news recently with the Supreme Court overturning the Roe v. Wade decision about abortion. And I wanted to go through it really briefly, what I think would be the main Torah view of this. It's not a Pesach Halak or anything. It's just like a general view of how I think the Torah would view this. And also I've seen a lot of people political activists, and they're kind of saying that Judaism holds by abortion as like a religious right. And I think that's really twisting what the Torah says. So I just thought it'd be helpful to point out some things of what the Torah is actually saying about something like this. So one of the main things is the Torah is called the Eitz Chaim. The Torah is called the Tree of Life. And one of the main goals of the Torah is life. And one of the main things is we want to increase our life in this world, in what's called Olam HaZeh, in this world. And then we want to take our life and we want to prepare ourselves, and we want to earn a place in what's called Olam HaBah, the world to come. And what that means is after the coming of Mashiach, after the Messiah comes, there's going to be a world where the sin of Adam and Chava, of Adam and Eve, is corrected, and there'll be no more death in the world. There'll be no more illness, and the long life of Olam HaBah, of the world to come, is what we want to earn. So it's all about life, and it's not a coincidence when Jewish people, when they make a toast, they say l'chaim, they say to life, because it's ingrained in the Jewish life, which we learned from the Torah. So one of the main things, the very first mitzvah given in the Torah, it's a command given to all mankind, is the mitzvah of pru. And it's a mitzvah, it's known as be fruitful and multiply. And it basically means it's a command. We're commanded by Hashem. It's a mitzvah to have children. So the Sefer HaChinuch, it says one of the reasons for the mitzvah is that Hashem wants the world to be inhabited. So the whole purpose of creation is that people should be able to appreciate this beautiful world and this beautiful everything that Hashem's created. And the more, it's kind of like the more the merrier. The more people in the world, that's a good thing. That's better. So you hear a lot of people recently talking about depopulation, which is really an evil idea. And it's really goes against, Hashem's will. Hashem, commanded that everyone, should get married and have children. And what we really want is a lot of children in the world, and that's a great blessing. That's what we call a bracha. It's a great blessing to get married and have children and grandchildren and great grandchildren, and to see a world of over 8 billion people. It's not something chas v'shalom that's a curse. It's a great blessing. It's a great thing to see that this many people are in the world of all kinds, the different nations, and each person brings a very special thing into the world. And all of mankind is created with a Tselem Elokim. So everyone's created in the image of God, meaning that we have, our real essence is our neshama, is our soul. And that soul is made out of the spiritual material. So who we really are is these spiritual beings, these souls inside a physical body in this world. And it's a great blessing that, we see this mitzvah and we see so many people in the world. So that's one of the main goals. One of the main goals is to populate the world and to have children and have many children and have, a world that's full, a world, many people appreciate it. So the second mitzvah that would really come into play here is there's a mitzvah of lo tirtzach. And it's a famous mitzvah of don't kill. And it's famous. It's in the Asara Dibros. It's in what's called the 10 Commandments. It's the 10 mitzvos we heard when we were standing at Mount Sinai. And this also is attached to the very first mitzvah of pru. The first mitzvah is that, everyone should have children. And then killing would be in a direct, that's something that would prevent the world from being inhabited. Okay? It would prevent, people from multiplying, and having, so many people in the world. So killing is another mitzvah. It's a lo taseh. It's something we can't do. We're prohibited from doing it. So the Sefer HaChinuch, it says that not only can we not kill a healthy person, but we can't kill, even someone, very close to death. Even if someone's about to die, we can never hasten their death. We can never hasten a person's death, and we want people, to live as long as they possibly can. And there's a real aversion, to suffering, and it's seen as a kindness to avert people's suffering, which is good. But in the sense, it's bad because sometimes we don't see the positive benefits. That there's a lot of times that we do suffer in this life, and we don't want to. But there's a great spiritual benefit that we can't always appreciate in this world right now. And when people see a greater perspective, when we see in the world to come, we'll see the great benefit that even though people had to suffer in life, that they got a great reward for it. Even though it's something that nowadays we don't really want to do, but there is a great spiritual benefit to us, and it makes us better people, it makes us more sensitive people, and it makes us more compassionate. So one of the main things is, because the Torah is about life, it's very important to see that that there's a concept of pekuach nefesh, and people talk about this a lot, but sometimes they're using this as a political activism. But it's true that if the mother's life, if the mother is physically in danger, then she her life has to take precedent. Because the Torah is about life, then the mother's life has to be taken care of, and then unfortunately, chas v'shalom, the baby has to be aborted in that case. Now, even if the mother was in a situation where, let's say, something like she had the pregnancy against her will, and it was very emotionally traumatic to her, so even if it's just emotionally traumatic and will destroy the mother emotionally, then also the mother has to have the abortion to save the mother's life, even if it's just emotionally destructive to her. But the main goal here, is life, and I think that it's so how do you fit this? I don't think the Torah view, I don't think it fits exactly into a secular society, and so secular society is seeing it a little differently. So we kind of contrast it to how the Constitution sees it. So it's interesting. So in the Declaration of Independence, it says, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed." So we see here that the Constitution, the secular view, is that they're saying that there's some kind of God-given, what they're calling rights, human rights, civil rights, it turns into, and that the governments are protecting these rights. So the Roe versus Wade decision, I think it was in 1973, and what the U.S. Supreme Court ruled was, they ruled that the mother had a right to choose to have an abortion. So the actual case was a woman named Norma McCorvey, and she was given the pseudonym of Jane Roe. And the case happened in 1969. So she became pregnant with her third child, and she was living in the state of Texas. And the state of Texas, at that time, the law in the state of Texas was it was illegal. Now, this is interesting. The law at that time was it was illegal to have an abortion except when it was necessary to save the mother's life. So they did have something provided that if the mother's life was in danger, that the mother's life could be saved. And then her attorneys, they filed the case against the district attorney where she lived, a man named Henry Wade. That's why it becomes Roe versus Wade. And then there was a 7-2 decision, and they were holding that the due process clause of the 14th Amendment would come into play here. So the due process clause is saying that the government cannot prohibit arbitrarily, they cannot arbitrarily deprive anyone of life, liberty, or property. So the government doesn't have the power to deprive someone of these things. So it was violating her rights, and it was based on the 14th Amendment. And the 14th Amendment was it was created in 1868. And it was a response to former slaves. And so what it was basically about, it was about citizenship rights and equal protection under the law. So they were really defining what was the rights of a citizen in the country and how everyone could be protected equally. But we see a very drastic difference in how the world is viewed between the Torah and the secular law. The Torah is viewing everything from looking at everything as life. Everything is we are given life by Hashem, and really we should have a karsa tov. We should have this appreciation and a thankfulness towards Hashem. And Hashem's given us mitzvahs. He's given us commandments, and these commandments help us grow. They help us. It's basically it's the Hashem's the Melech HaOlam. He's the King of the universe, and He's given us these laws to live a better life. We can become better people following the laws of the Torah. We can live in shalom. We can live in peace with other people in the world, if we're following these mitzvos. And that I think, like in this view, like abortion, this is not be a common thing. This is really going against the purpose of creation, of getting married and having children, and only when the mother's life, in the instances when the mother's life needed to be protected, would abortion be allowed? Now, I don't want to go into I think really how it would work in a Torah society is this would be an individual question that a mother would ask. She would ask a shaila of a rabbi, and they would come to a decision of what she should personally do. And I don't know if it would be a big public, the way that this has all become politicized, maybe, very destructive, the amount of tension and arguments, and it really should be a very personal thing, handled, each case, and not one size fits all, maybe, is not a, but I think what it's created is because in the secular world, it's viewed as a right, it's created, I don't know, it's created almost an attitude where this is something that is good. And I think that has become something very destructive. I mean, I think, like ending life is a very bad thing. It's very destructive. Like in the law, so I mean, people. I mean, we should be looking for ways to, extend life and create more life and not end it. It's a very negative attitude. It's a very destructive attitude, and that maybe that it's become viewed as something inherently good it's been very destructive over the years. So, right, it's hard to see exactly how it should fit into a secular society. But also one thing I wanted to mention is that this idea of like Hashem, nowhere in the Torah does Hashem promise us these rights. He's given us life, and He's given us bechira. He's given us free will to choose between good and evil, and He's commanded us on the best way to live life. The mitzvahs are the best way to live life, but nowhere in the Torah is any mention of any rights. So that's a very different attitude of saying that people have rights and governments are protecting those rights. Because the mitzvah gives us obligations. It gives us things that we have to do and things that we should appreciate. So to give you an example, like the mitzvah of kivud av v'em, honoring your mother and your father, it's one of the mitzvahs that promises a long life. And the very idea of honoring our parents, it's constantly it reinforces with us like just appreciation, that our parents, we wouldn't be alive if not for our parents and Hashem. And the sacrifices that a parent makes for the child. And it's just, and this mitzvah can really, even though sometimes it's tricky, sometimes your parents say things you don't like, they get under your skin, but it constantly builds a karsa tov, it builds an appreciation. But whereas like we say, oh, we have these rights, where it may sound very good, but I think it creates a real selfishness because I think it's like in a way the exact opposite. Oh, I have this right, I have this, I have that. But it's not a mitzvah that's trying to push us to be, more giving, more selfless. It really, in a sense, these rights are making us more selfish. And I think if we look at society today, we do unfortunately see a society that's very, self-centered and selfish and, chasing after all the desires of the world. What do I want? Not what's best, for others. So that's, it's a little bit of a contrast. You can tell me what you think, and hope to see you back again soon on Sweet Good Torah.